Right, we're ready to pick up with subpoint D. Subpoint D says, with regard to the mental will, comma, it is important to note particularly in our current time, comma, that one of the most effective weapons that Satan can use against the mature and or maturing believer, it's not really an and or, I should say, against the mature or maturing believer, is worry. Period. Through worry, you lose the ability to think, or to use doctrine. Of course, this results in you not using doctrine like you should. If you can't think and you can't use doctrine, then you're not going to use the doctrine, and you're going to rely on what? Primarily emotion. That's why individuals who are worried tend to just be scattered all over. They have their emotion. And you can usually see it on individuals. It becomes a physical manifestation many times when the individual is undergoing tremendous worry and fear and anxiety. It causes adrenaline. It causes all kinds of physiological reactions. That primarily the main physiological reaction is you don't get into your brain. Okay, you react. So consequently, to use doctrines, continuing the point, the immature believer who uses the faith rest technique to restart his function uses only promises. Remember, the faith rest technique is the technique that you use to get things going. You start by claiming a promise, but then you're not supposed to stop there. Once you claim a promise, the promise is a memorized thing that gets your mind going, gets you the grease in the cogs of your memory to start working. And from there, you're supposed to go and use doctrines. You're supposed to take your doctrines and come up with a doctrinal scenario in which to apply to the problem at hand. But the immature believer is only going to use promises, and he's going to stop. So I said uses promises and stops. But we, as mature believers, are supposed to continue the faith rest technique and use full doctrines or doctrinal concepts and not just promises. We are at our most powerful when we are applying doctrinal concepts. So you're supposed to go into the phone booth and put on our superpower of doctrine and come back out and function properly and take on Satan and Satan's attacks. And we're supposed to do it through the suit that was given to us by God, the doctrinal promises and the doctrinal concepts that we have, that we can apply, the armor of God. See, it's given to us. For those of you that remember, there used to be a show in the 70s or 80s, I forget what it was, called The Greatest American Hero. And the premise of the show was the individual had been given a super suit that gave him superpowers, but the problem was he lost the operating manual. And he didn't quite know what the suit all did. And he didn't know quite how to fly. The poor guy never really got to where he was flying. He was going all over the place, right? But God gave us a suit, and he gave us the instructions on how to use it. And for us, it's not just promises, it's going farther and using the doctrinal concepts. So continue the point. Either way, this means whether you're using promises or concepts, either way, Satan can separate you from the use of doctrine and promises through worry. He knows your special area of worry. See, we all have a special area of worry. Mine's different than yours, right? Yours is different than the person behind you or in front of you. We each have a different area of worry. For some people, it's finances. They're constantly worried about finances. Is God going to take care of them? Are they going to have the money that they need to do what they want? Are they going to have the money that they need to do the things they desire? Other people could care less about finances, right? It is what it is. They're worried about health, right? You have other people that are worried about family. Are my children going to be okay? Are my parents going to be okay? You have other people that are worried about self. Gee, do I look good? Right? Whatever it is, God knows, Satan knows what that area is, and he's going to be constantly applying pressure, agitating it, trying to get you to worry. Okay? We have to understand that, an ounce of worry can cut you off from doctrine. Remember that old adage that an ounce of wine added to a gallon of manure is still manure, right? And an ounce of manure, a drop of manure added to a gallon of wine is still manure. You can't have the two together, right? So worry is going to corrupt it no matter what. Continue the point. If you are in constant worry, Satan will be there to devour you. 1 Peter 5, 7 through 9. Now that is weird. That was supposed to be subpoint D. Did I say 4? I did, didn't I?
You said D, like prior to.
But the point said 4. Yeah. Yeah, that was D. For some reason, I don't have D on the slide. I thought I did everything correctly. When you're doing 11 o'clock at night, you're. You know what? I think what happened was I actually hit tab. It is supposed to be 4. I apologize. On my notes here, I accidentally hit a tab. It is supposed to be 4. Because in point 5 is talking about our focus. So that it's not D, it's 4. I apologize. It is capital 4. The slides are right. My notes are wrong. Point 5. In addition, with regard to the mental will, Satan also attacks your focus and concentration. Semicolon. For example, comma, through things such as YouTube, TV, or entertainment in general. If he can keep you from focusing on God, by distracting you with entertainment, he can destroy your mental will. Period. For example, there are a plethora of streaming services. You can find almost anything you want on streaming services. The problem is, what is it you want? Many times it's going to tickle your old sin nature. You're going to watch stuff you shouldn't have been watching and shouldn't have had access to begin with. You know, they talk about the information age and what built the internet and the superhighway. What built the internet and the superhighway is pornography, right? If it wasn't for pornography, you wouldn't have the internet. The extent of it grew because people could all of a sudden have this access. They didn't have to go behind the woodshed to get dad's Playboys. They could get on the internet in the privacy of their own whatever and do that. Is that right? Of course it's not right. It's a Satan's tool. You have all kinds of shows nowadays. There are very few shows that have the moral content that they should have. Everything's been corrupted. It's been corrupted to handle woke things such as Black Lives Matter, such as anti-racism. You know, they've redone a Scandinavian tale called Little Mermaid and made it entirely black. Okay, they are desensitizing you to proper function. Not that a black Little Mermaid is necessarily wrong, okay? But it's corrupting things that were historical. You have. How many times have you gone on YouTube and you've gone down the YouTube rat hole? And the next thing you know, you've consumed 5 hours of watching junk. 5 hours that you could have used to apply memorizing promises, to apply reviewing your notes, to apply looking at doctrine, to apply functioning out in the world, being an ambassador, being an evangelist, meeting people, doing things that you need to do, applying the doctrine that you have. Instead, you're cloistered with your face in YouTube, watching YouTube. Now we have the media, supposed news media. That is not news. The only thing the media does is they either advertise for companies. Fox Network's one of the biggest. That just drives me crazy. The local news station will have these human interest segments, and they're just advertising for a company that many times you could care less about, but it's like, did they pay for that? But anyway, you go to look at news, you can't get news, you get opinion. Used to be you could, people would say, this is the opinion page. Now you got to try and find the fact page. Everything's opinion. You can't find the facts. You can't find logical thinking. You got talking heads that just report what the upper echelon, the elite, want the poor plebes down at the bottom to hear. That's a lack of focus, a lack of concentration. Kids nowadays, because everything has to happen like this, have no attention span whatsoever. They can't sit down and read a book. They're bored after the first half page because they don't know how to read. They don't know how to sit. They don't know how to be with themselves. Jack used to talk about people that had their earphones plugged in and were constantly listening to music because they couldn't stand being by themselves. They couldn't stand their own thoughts. They had to have this artificial stimulation of music. Well, it's gone way past music. Now it's music and video and, all kinds of audio and video. And it goes back to my doctrine that I had on boredom. You're not supposed to be bored as a believer. There's more information that God gives you than you could possibly ever, get an entire full grasp on. He always has something available for us to grow more. And when you're distracted like that, and when you lose your focus, Satan's up there going, yes, got me another one potentially. Wear the edges off of this individual, wear little by little, boil this frog, get him to start accepting this stuff. Men can get pregnant. Women can marry women, men can marry men. Pretty soon, anybody can marry their animal. We used to laugh at that. I can remember we used to laugh at all kinds of things that are now true. So don't be surprised if 5 years from now someone changes the definition of marriage to any entity who has a conjoined relationship with another entity. Right? An entity could be a dog, a cat, a tree, whatever. Or virtual. Yeah, that's the other thing. You're going to live your life with virtual goggles on and live in a world that doesn't exist. Okay? So, if he can keep you from focusing on God by distracting you with entertainment, did I give you that sentence? He can destroy your mental will. Okay? To counter this, you need to learn to focus and to concentrate. Semicolon. Otherwise, comma, you will wipe out your own ability to apply doctrine by losing your focus. I had engineers that worked for me once in a while where you'd try and give them a task and they would be all over the place. It's like, yoo-hoo, focus. I'm telling you, you got to do this. But, no, you got to do this. You can't do that other thing until this is done first. You're trying to build a pyramid from the peak down, right? It doesn't work. Yeah. Of course, you live in Tempe, and then they took the pyramid and they turned it upside down, and they built it from the peak first and went out like that. But the idea is you got to focus. Okay, so you're going to ruin your own ability to apply doctrine by losing your focus. Continue the point. Instead, meaning instead of getting concentration and focus, instead you focus your eyes on people and things. This includes self-pity. Hero worship. The love of things, etc. 1 Kings 19, 10 through 14. Is an example of eyes on self and self-pity. See, this is the example of Elijah. Elijah was a mature believer, right? He was a prophet, but this is the account of Elijah feeling sorry for himself. Ooh, poor me, I'm the only one around, right? And God's got to say, shut up and get back to work. And in fact, I'm going to replace you because of this. And so then you have Elisha. But the idea is what caused him to fail. What caused him to fail was losing his focus. He was no longer focusing on God. He wasn't concentrating on God, the plan of God, and what God had for his life. He was focusing on me. Look at all these wonderful things that I'm doing. I'm doing everything you told me to, and I'm still getting beat up. Okay? Oh, poor you. Go to the garden and eat worms. Save some for me so I can take them fishing. Anyway. Jeremiah 17:5. is a command to not have your eyes on people. See, there's two sides of that. There's hero worship. Oh, gee, I'll never be like this individual. They're so great, blah, blah, blah. Or there's the other side, which is, ooh, I'm so much better than that person and trying to make your happiness on their unhappiness, right? I'm better than you, therefore I'm greater than you. No, or like I said, trying to keep up with the Joneses. There's two different ways of looking at it. And continue the point, and an example of eyes on things is given in Hebrews 13, 5 and 6. Where the love of money is specifically called out. Satan uses this key weapon against all of us, no matter what our maturity. So stay alert, period. See, concentration and focus is something you have to learn. And concentration and focus is something that is supposed to come from doctrine. When you apply doctrine and you have a well-ordered life, then you have the ability to concentrate. You have the ability to focus. You aren't flitting all over. You can have your concentration on one thing for a period of time and not have to be concerned about what's going outside. You can be aware of it, but you'd be concentrating on this. And then you can move to the next task. You don't have to constantly trying to be multitasking. What you find out is as you get older, the more you try to multitask, the more balls get dropped because you forgot to do this or you forgot to do that. Well, why was that? Because you were in such a hurry to try to do that and get it done so you can go to something else, or you were doing two things at the same time and you totally forgot, right? That's the women. Now, women usually have a much better ability to multitask than men. Men are very linear. Women are just, So they have, but even women, right? They'll be in the middle of cooking while they're doing the laundry, while they're doing, something else, and then the next thing you know, it's like, okay, you go to eat, and it's like, oops, I forgot to add salt, or oops, I forgot to do this, right? Well, it's because you weren't concentrating on your cooking. You were concentrating on your cooking and your vacuuming and your washing, and yeah, it tells you what generation I live in, right? But anyway, that's the idea. So focus, and as you have children, teach them to focus, etc. Point 6. Satan has a plan of deception which includes 9 counterfeit areas, : I'm going to be ahead of the game. I've exegeted a couple verses in chapter 2 already, and we're not even going to get there. I can get back to finishing the doctrine that I'm working on. Okay, point 6. Satan has a plan of deception that has 9 areas, 9 counterfeit areas. So point A, gospel. Second Corinthians 11, 3 and 4. And those verses, it's talking about preaching other than Jesus. It's a false gospel. We understand the gospel, the social gospel. Good little boys go to heaven, bad little boys go to hell. That's directly from Satan. He has a false gospel, a counterfeit gospel. Subpoint B, ministers or communicators. He has counterfeit ministers or communicators. 2 Corinthians 11, 13 through 15. Specifically calls out false apostles, deceitful workers, And of course, our whole second chapter is going to talk about false communicators. So you can say 2 Peter chapter 2. Subpoint C, doctrine. Satan has counterfeit doctrine. You got to have doctrine. See, he's got all of these things are things that are in a proper plan, God's proper, perfect plan, and Satan is counterfeiting them. So subpoint C, doctrine. 1 Timothy 4:1. I've given that to you before, but that's doctrine of demons. What's an example of a doctrine of demon? The good of the many outweighs the good of the few. Right? That's what we're being taught all the time by our socialistic leaders. Oh, well, you'll get used to us controlling your life because it's better for everybody. Right? Just give us your guns and we'll take care of you. We'll protect you. Yeah, right. What's happening when you send 50 illegal aliens to Martha's Vineyard? They go berserk. They don't know how to even handle it. Those are the people you want to be controlling your life? They can't even handle 50 people. We're down here in these southern states handling, tens of thousands that are flooding through the border. Okay? So you have doctrine. Subpoint D. Don't know why there's a T on the end of communion. Subpoint D. Communion. 1 Corinthians 10. 19 through 21. Satan has a form of worship and a form of communion. He talks about sacrificing to demons. This talks about drinking of the cup of demons. You can't drink of the cup of demons and drink of the cup of our Lord at the same time. Subpoint E, spirituality. Galatians 3, 2 and 3. This talks about being perfected by the flesh. The spirituality comes with following Satan's plan and using your flesh and your old sin nature to achieve the ultimate, as opposed to proper spirituality in worshiping God. Okay? When you talk about what does the Scientologists try to do? They try to have spirituality through buying it, by having this demonism, right? Subpoint F. We have counterfeit righteousness. Matthew 19, 16 through 28. Matthew 19, 16 through 28. This is righteousness associated with doing good rather than believing in the Lord. I give my money up. I do, I do everything to drop everything and follow Jesus. I try to be like St. Francis or Mother Teresa, right? I'm going to be righteous because of everything that I do. Well, we understand through our study of the communion that the righteousnesses of mankind cannot in any way satisfy God. Subpoint G, a modus operandi or a mode of operation. Matthew 23, the whole chapter. The whole chapter of Matthew 23 is associated with the Pharisees and their cosmic function in the Lord Jesus Christ, calling it out. But they're prime examples of the modus operandi, whatever, of Satan and functioning in Satan's plan. Subpoint H, power. Satan tries to counterfeit the power of God by having the power of Satan. Second Thessalonians 2, 8 through 10. That passage specifically calls out power and signs and false wonders. Right? What's an example that we know about when we studied the spiritual gifts? We have tongues, and the practice of any temporary spiritual gift is trying to apply power that doesn't exist. And it's Satan's power. Satan wants the believer to use tongues and therefore be totally halted in their proper function. And subpoint I, and I did it with a little letter this time, is gods. Satan creates a multitude of false gods. We certainly see a lot of that in our study of the Old Testament, Marduk and things like that. Well, why does he create these false gods? Because eventually he wants to show that he is the God of gods. He's greater than these false gods. That's 2 Thessalonians 2, 3 and 4, where Satan puts himself above the all, quote, so-called gods, end quote. You can't be the best if you don't have something to compare to. So he has false gods. And subpoint, yeah, that's 9 of them. Okay. So now we're ready to do, I think maybe we can cover it. Point 7. We must always be aware that Satan is a creature and not a demigod. Because he can only be in one place at one time, he must rely on his minions to help him. And that's to help him implement his plan of attack and deception. These minions can be fallen angels, or they can be human satanic evangelists. In chapter 2, we are going to see the latter. Latter. So here's a guy who took his friend into his shed, and he showed him, he said, look, there's my step ladder. I never really knew my real ladder. Anyway. Okay. Sorry. In chapter 2, we're going to see the ladder and the effects that they can have on believers and unbelievers alike. So chapter 2, Peter's going to give us information associated with being a believer and coming into contact with these false teachers. But he's also going to talk about the unbeliever and the effects on the unbeliever with regard to these false teachers and the false teachers themselves who are unbelievers. Okay. One last sentence here. These false teachers can be counted on to teach the following topics. And have the following characteristics. Colon. And I'm going to give you 5 characteristics or teachings of these false teachers, but we're going to have to wait until next week because we have run out of time. So that's where we're going to stop. We have those 5 characteristics, and then we have a kind of a summary and or a further explanation in point 8 Point 9 is very short. Point 9 is going to actually give us the outline for the chapter, and it's broken into three pieces. And then we'll actually get right into the chapter. But I thought it was important for us to get our mindset so that as we hit the chapter, we know why Peter is doing this, what we're looking at, where this information comes from. Okay? With that, we're ready to sing.